That's usually when we get the call, hey, I have a tire wearing out, I need an alignment. The right rear tire is the axle that's in question. We definitely have more wear here than we do on the inside. We are 1 inch off on this rear axle. Welcome back to the channel. We had a viewer leave us a comment and ask us a question, can we do a video on trailer alignment? This is a question that we get pretty often. This is something that we do check for our customers. This is a repair that we perform pretty regularly, but it varies between trailers, axle sizes, spring setups. So there's a lot to it. It's not as easy as just maybe taking your automobile in to get a front end alignment or a rear end alignment. So we're going to cover some of the scenarios and why your trailer might need an alignment, why you think it might need alignment, some of the most common causes we see, the types of repairs we do, and then we're going to go over some of the components. So let's just jump right into it. So this type of alignment we'll be dealing specifically with the spring axle, whether that's a double I or whether that's a slipper spring setup. This can be done with single axle setup, triple axle, tandem axle. It's going to be the same concept no matter how many axles you have. So let's first talk about some components. The technical term for this is a spring seat, AKA spring perch, AKA spring saddle. If you say any of those things, a part supply or repair shop is going to know what you need. This will be welded to the axle and these will wear out, and I'll show you where they will wear out. So this is going to be mounted either to the top of your spring. If you own a travel trailer, many times it's going to be underneath, so your axle is going to be on the bottom side of the spring. If you'll notice in here, there's a little slack. It sets right on top of the spring tie bolt, which is this little booger right here. This is the spring tie bolt. This goes in, it compresses the stack. Once you have it tightened, then you cut the excess length off of that. So you can see there's only about 1/8 of an inch difference between front and back and or side to side. So there's not a lot of movement there, but if you put 1/8 this way and then on the other side 1/8 to the front, that is 1/4 of an inch of adjustment. This is a spring seat for a larger axle. This is for a 10K Dexter axle. Different manufacturers have different looking seats, but they all do the same thing. Here's maybe the misconception sometimes. It's not just as simple as taking your trailer in to get an alignment in most cases. Most times the suspension is fixed once it is installed from the manufacturer, or if you've had a major repair done, new hangers put on, there's not a lot of adjustment that can be made. You can't make inches of adjustment. You can make 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch adjustment, but sometimes that's all you need. In the manufacturing world, in the trailer industry, with standard spring seat setup like we have here, you are allowed 1/4 of an inch out of square. That means from the tongue of the trailer to your axles, you're allowed 1/4 inch, which would be an 1/8 inch either way. If you're having better suspension, like some of your 8K and larger, which you're using the Hutch style suspension that has a fully adjustable suspension, that number is tighter. It's 1/16 allowance on that. You can really get it dialed in with that type of suspension right on the money. Your other types of suspension you may have, if you have a travel trailer, some of the nicer travel trailers will have this already installed. Sometimes you can have this put on after the fact, but it is a fully adjustable suspension for your tandem axle. MoRide makes one. Some other manufacturers make it as well, but you can really get that dialed in. We were going to bring in a new trailer and just show you this, show you the method, some of the causes, but we had a trailer come in that needs an emergency repair, that they have an axle that's off, that's wearing the tire. That's usually when we get the call, hey, I have a tire wearing out, I need an alignment. But I will tell you this, 9 times out of 10 in that scenario, it is normally a bent axle, which there is no alignment on that. That is an axle replacement. But many times you will have one come in that the axle is off and you've had a failure, you've had a component fail. I'm gonna show you a couple places where that can fail. This would be one of the most common right here. Whether the axle is on top or bottom, this bolt will shear off. Maybe you've hit a pothole or something. It will shear off and allow the spring to either expand this direction or compress this way, and so it's throwing that axle alignment off. Another thing is, if your U-bolts get loose over time just from wear and tear, this will start to oblong out, so this hole can become large. We see some, honestly, sometimes the hole is this big. At that point, this would have to be removed and replaced, and usually the spring has to be replaced at that point too, just from wear. On some of your larger 8 to 10K axles, they will have this as a fixed seat on one side, and on the other side, they will have an adjustable spring seat. Those are great. I wish we had something like that that was more common on the smaller axles. In that scenario, you can adjust it. That being said, sometimes those adjustable spring seats will fail and it will cause the axle to become out of square, but those are a quick, easy fix. I've just pulled this trailer in. I know the axle is off. I don't believe this axle is bent by looking, but we're gonna take a series of measurements just to determine that. This will be the same measurements if you're checking for an alignment, and we're gonna see if we have a broke spring. Something else that could happen, we see this quite often. Somebody will break a spring, go buy a spring, replace that spring, and they put the wrong spring on. The spring is different in inches, and it will throw the alignment off and cause the tire to wear or cause your trailer to track sideways, maybe crab crawl going down the highway. So that's just some things that we see on a regular basis, but just keep in mind as an owner, if you take that in and say, hey, I need an axle alignment, and they say, we don't do axle alignments, that's not uncommon for a shop not to do that or not to know what you're talking about. We don't have any fancy laser machine. They don't use any fancy laser machine at the manufacturer. They're gonna use a tape measure here. They're gonna use a plumb bob and a large tape. I'm gonna recommend a 100-foot tape. If you got a short trailer, then obviously you don't need a 100-foot tape. We use a 100-foot tape because some of our units are 40 foot plus 8 foot of tongue, so it takes a long tape to do that. And you will need a Sharpie. Remember, this is not a Marks-a-Lot like I like to call them and get corrected on, but it is a Sharpie, but you need something to mark with, and I'll show you what we do on that. So we're gonna move over to the trailer. We're gonna take the tires off. We already have this thing supported in the air on jack stands. Not gonna show that. If you wanna see how that works, go check one of our videos out on that. We'll leave a link in the description below, how to properly support your trailer. So we're gonna go over here, we're gonna pull the tires off, and we're gonna get set up and show you how to measure this thing out. The right rear tire is the axle that's in question. I don't know if you can pick it up in the video, but we definitely have more wear here than we do on the inside, so the outside is wearing, which many times could be a bent axle, or you could have wear due to improper balance, improper inflation. There's a lot that goes on, but we did take a measurement, and I'm going to show you that measurement we took a while ago that lets me know that the axle is off. So this is the rear axle is what's the suspect. So we're gonna check all that out. We're gonna move to the other side and pull those tires off, and I'm gonna show you how to take the measurements. So with the trailer supported in the air on jack stands, we have it level all the way from front to back, and that is an important step in this. You don't wanna have it tilted one way or the other. You don't wanna have the tongue down or up. And then also I have a jack underneath one of the axles. I have them the equal distance. So my spacing in between the axle and the frame is the same on both axles. My equalizer is equally distributed all the way across, so we get a correct measurement. So I took this measurement in the parking lot when the trailer come in, just to see. This is something I would do to see if it is a bent axle. This is something I do to see if it may have a broke spring or the wrong spring. So we'll take a center to center measurement, which will be your axle spread. This one here is about 34 and 15/16. So we're gonna take note of that and compare that to the other side. So 34 and 15/16 on that. So let's go to the other side and see what we got. So now we're back to the passenger side where we had the worn tire. Our measurement on the other side was 34 and 15/16. I'll do it this way so maybe we can see it in the camera. So we're at 33, about 33 and 5/8. So we are off a bunch. Like I said, you're allowed a 1/4 of an inch. If that measurement here to there would have been within a 1/4 inch, that's perfectly fine because that's only 1/8 of an inch either way. So we know this is off a lot. So it's either this axle or that axle. I'm confident that it's back here, but I'm gonna show you how to measure that, that way in case the measurement is closer, because it could be the front axle. So we're gonna get a couple of our tools. I'm gonna show you what those are, and we'll leave a link in the description below of any of the tools we use on here, some of the components. So if you need some help trying to find those, hopefully that will speed the process up for you and you can get your trailer back on the road. So the first thing we're gonna need is our plumb bob, and then we're gonna need a tape measure. We're gonna need our 100-foot tape and our Sharpie. So let me grab my Sharpie, and we're gonna take the plumb bob, and we just mark these on our floor. You don't have to mark on our floor. You can have something underneath it. If you don't have hard surface, you can put, you know, a piece of cardboard or something down, but you just got to make sure if it's there, it doesn't move to throw your measurement off. We're going to get about the right height on it to where it's not touching the floor. We're going to put that in the very center of our hub. And this is where it's critical to take your time to make sure you get in the center. X marks the spot. We're going to repeat this process on the other side, but now we're going to move up to the tongue and get our measurement from there, and we'll pull off of that measurement. So let's move up to the coupler. So now we're going to go to the center of our coupler, make our same mark. Okay, we'll grab a tape, and I will use our handy dandy off-camera assistant to help me pull that tape, and we'll take some measurements. So this is where you would need 2 people to do this. So you're going to start at the front. When we do the passenger side, we'll run the tape down this side. Make sure the tape is perfectly straight. Make sure your ribbon is not twisted. When we go to do the other side, it'd be the same concept. We'll just move it over. So we're going to start right on the X. We're going to pull the tape, and let's see what we get on the rear. So if we look down here on the tape, I have my helper holding at the front. We have a measurement of 13 feet, 7 3/4. So let's pull it to the back axle. You good? So now we have 16, 3 3/4. And we'll go to the other side and do the same thing, and then we'll get our calculator out, count on your toes and fingers, however you need to do it, see if you have any discrepancies. Okay, on our front axle, we have 13, 7 1/4. Let's check the rear. And on the back axle, we have 16, 4 3/4. So now let's compare those between themselves and see where the problem is. So now that we've taken all of our measurements with our plumb bob and our 100-foot tape, we can see right here, if we go down with the camera, we are 1 inch off on this rear axle. When it came in, like I stated, it looked to me like it was the right rear passenger. It's actually off on the left rear passenger. The tire was wearing over there, but for us, we just got this trailer in. This customer has just done a bunch of repair on this trailer where they've had the tires off. They may have took the tire from here and put it over there, so it makes it a little tougher for us. Even though they had tire wear, the tire wear would be coming from over here. It is off over there, but is not as bad as it is over here. And I will tell you what we found. This is not something that just needs, you know, an adjustment. This is a component failure. So we have a couple things worn out. The first thing we have worn out, the rear hanger has some wear and the bolt is shifted back. So we will remove that. Sometimes if the hole is not oblong too bad, we will weld that up. We will take a series of measurements, then we will clean that back out to accept the bolt. The other place, it also is worn out on the spring seat like we talked about, and it looks like maybe that the spring tie bolt has been sheared off just due to the measurement. This axle is setting way far back on this side of the spring compared to the front of the spring, so when we cut these U-bolts loose, I expect the spring to fall apart. It also has some worn suspension bolts. The bushings are out, so the bolt is not in the center of the spring eye, so we have some adjustment loss there. I will tell you, the front hangers on this trailer from the factory are off by just under 1/4 of an inch. That's pretty common. We'll occasionally get some that are off at 1/2 inch, and we have to make that repair here, or we'll send it back to the manufacturer if we can get them to do that. And that's a matter of cutting the suspension loose and doing a full realignment. So this is how you take the measurements to align your trailer, but just note, like I said, unless you have an adjustable suspension, it's likely a component failure, wear and tear, you've hit a chug hole or something and you've knocked that axle loose, but you will still need these measurements in order to figure out the math, because like I said, even though it looked like it was over there, the math doesn't lie. The issue's over here. It is off over there a small amount because this is off so much, kicked to the back. So once we pull this forward, it will begin to straighten the other side up, but you'll still have to go back and check that once you get everything snugged up on here. So we will remove all of these springs, all of the suspension, replace everything, get it in place, take new plumb bob measurements to see if we can get it within that 1/4 of an inch that we are allowed over the whole trailer. Just note that it may, if you take it in for an alignment, it may not be an easy fix. You may need a full suspension repair, or you may have a bent axle, which is the most common. Once your axle is bent, that thing is a boat anchor. I know of some places that straighten axles and stuff like that. We don't straighten any axles. We throw those in the dumpster and we replace it with a good axle that's not been compromised. Something else we noticed on this trailer, I don't know, I'm gonna take the camera, I'm gonna be the camera guy for a second. I'm gonna show you something else we found on here. We found a critical failure in this trailer that will make this trailer not roadworthy. This trailer is supposed to leave out next week and be gone for most of the summer. It's not going to leave at the first of the week. It has a major issue on it. We see this on cargo trailers, and we see this specifically in the RV industry. The frames are light. I will tell you, this trailer has been overloaded, and I'm gonna see if I can capture that on camera for you to show you how I know that. And it's caused some major frame damage on here that we're gonna have to repair. So I'm gonna take the camera. I'm a bad camera person. So I'm first gonna show you if I can sneak up in here. I apologize if it's sketchy. So this is the hanger, as you can see here. If you look right above on the frame, can you see that big crack? So the I-beam is cracked all the way back. So that will have to be fish plated and repaired. This is how you can tell that we know that it's been overloaded. If you look at the bottom of the I-beam, right in here, that big dent, that is not made to give you extra clearance on the axle. That has been made from the axle compressing up against the frame. And if you'll look, if we can see it in the top of the axle, there's a big dent in there too, where the axle has actually been riding on the frame. So that is only caused by overloading and or broke springs from overloading and just been cruising on the frame for some time. So this frame has been under a lot of stress. It is broke in all 4 locations. This is gonna be a major repair. And so now I'm gonna pass the camera back because I have no clue as to what I'm doing, so bear with me. I don't say all of that to scare you, but I do show you all this because you never know what you're gonna get into. Yours maybe is something as simple as the spring is broke, need to replace that spring, you get back on measurement and you're good to go. It could be a bent axle, you need to replace that axle, but there's a lot involved in an alignment. It's not, you know, I try to educate our customers on it. It's not as simple as just doing a trailer alignment, but this is how we do it. We do it with a plumb bob, tape measure, a series of measurements, and a little investigative work. When this come in, I'd ask what type of work they'd done. These guys are just employees. They had no idea, other than I could tell the whole trailer had been reskinned, so I know the tires have been off of the unit. It has had some springs put on at some point. These are not the original springs, but the suspension has not been replaced. It looks like they probably reused some of the old suspension when they replaced the springs. Once we get all of this fixed up, this trailer will be good to go. The frame will be stronger. The way we will repair the frame, it will be stronger than it was in the beginning. Some of the RV manufacturers have gotten better about, if you look up underneath your frame above your axle, they've started putting some fish plates already to try to prevent the cracking. They've done that because they've had to warranty so many. So like it's been said before, you know, sometimes the manufacturer doesn't always do it the best. And part of that is sometimes the consumer always doesn't want to pay for the best. So it's a fine line that we have to walk on there. But we will get this trailer going, and it's going to put these guys behind. But just keep an eye on all this. You know, keep an eye on your PM. If you start seeing tire wear or something off, just go ahead and get that checked out, whether you do it or get it into a qualified shop, so that you don't have any downtime. It's summertime here. It's time to go to work. It's time to go to play. So we don't want to be hanging out on something we could have done back during the summer. So if you have any comments, continue to leave those below. We're getting some great video ideas. Thank you for the good comments. If you have bad comments, keep commenting those. We have videos coming for you too. It's going to be good. We're going to enjoy this, make the best of it. Thank you for all the feedback. Again, if you need any of these components, we'll leave some description. We'll leave a link in the description below for some of the tools and some of the components we use on here. We will see you on the next one.